So we're continuing now discussing how you can make requests against the Salesforce REST API service from within your Alpha Anywhere applications. And we've just shown how we can use the Salesforce API request helper function to execute a query using the Salesforce SOQL syntax. And you can see that when I click the run button over here, the query is executed directly, and that's because we're in development mode right now, and we've previously authenticated our named provider over here. So you can see the little green icon over there indicates that we already have the access token for this named resource. So let's go now and actually log out. So now you can see we've got a red icon over there, and then click OK, and now go back and execute this again. So now we no longer are logged into Salesforce. So when I go ahead then and run this, Alpha Anywhere automatically detects that we're not logged in and begins the OAuth flow to authenticate against Salesforce. So now I can go here and type in my Salesforce user ID and password, and then continue my authentication. So I'll go ahead and click on the login button, and then Salesforce basically asks if I want to give permission to Alpha Anywhere to access my Salesforce account. I'll go ahead there and select yes, and then after I've done that, you can see the request is made against the Salesforce API endpoint. And now if I do this second time, basically we no longer are presented with the login screen because the access token has been cached. So what we've shown so far is how to make query requests using the Salesforce API and using the Salesforce SOQL syntax. So next what we're going to do is show how we can make generic requests against any REST API endpoint that is documented in the Salesforce documentation. So here we are back at the Salesforce documentation, and you can see that basically in their API documentation here they describe all of the different resources, and for each resource they show what the endpoint would be. So basically if you wanted to create an announcement, this is the endpoint that you would execute a post request against. If you wanted to find an announcement by ID, then you would execute a GET request using this endpoint, passing in the ID that you wanted. So basically we can go to the Salesforce documentation, find out what the endpoint is and what the syntax is, whether it's a GET or a POST, etc. And then we can go back into Alpha Anywhere and execute that the request. So let's go back now into Alpha Anywhere and execute various requests against the Salesforce API. So we'll switch back into Alpha Anywhere there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a request against the Salesforce API to get the detail for an account, and the account that we want to get information about is this account over here. So our endpoint now is defined as this, and we can go ahead now and execute the code, and now we're going to get back the data for that particular account. So in this case you can see that because we didn't specify a verb over here, so basically you can see that the verb is an option, that the default verb of get was used, and so we did a get request against this endpoint over here to retrieve the data. So let's pause now, and in the next video we'll show how we can use a different endpoint to create a new record in the account object.